I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We don't have a strategy yet. There's no point in me asking for action on the part of Congress before I know exactly what it is that is going to be required for us to get the job done.
The White House very busy with damage control following those comments late last week from President Obama.
Joining us now is our political analyst, Michael Yaki. Yeah, those comments really putting the White House in a very tough situation. What is their next move now, and how do they deal with this?
I think their next move is to come up with a strategy and to do it in a way that makes some sense to the American people, because the reality is that we're at war with ISIS, whether we're declared it or not. The fact that we are engaged in pretty much freehand bombing of all ISIS. Like most recently, we just helped the Kurds and the Iraqi army liberate the town of Amerli in northern Iraq because we went and bombed ISIS. And how far we do that, I mean, and that's far beyond the scope of the authorization of military force that he's been using to justify the airstrike so far for the war against Saddam Hussein. Believe it or not, they're still trying to use that. But this is not the Republican Guard. This is not the Ba'ath Party. This is not Saddam Hussein. This is an entirely independent force coming in. They're helping to repel an invader, and that's a totally different situation.
So the president is facing fire now from all sides. The GOP has jumped in with several senators saying that we need some type of strategy. We should have moved on this sooner. Ted Cruz, for instance, quoted as saying this morning, we should bomb ISIS back to the Stone Age.
I think the biggest problem is that this is something that has, for the American people, come up very fast, and it was really gelled with the execution and beheading and the awful tragedy of James Foley. Because remember, we've been talking about ISIS in sort of offhand terms early in the year with regard to Assad and chemical weapons, and the fact that there's this coalition of forces trying to overthrow Bashar Assad. We're trying to help Assad, and there's this one offshoot that's even more violent than Al Qaeda, and that was how we referenced them. And all of a sudden, boom! They're in our faces. They invaded Iraq. They share a border with Turkey, so NATO is involved. There are a lot of different factors involved here, not to mention the fact that whether Israel chooses to admit it or not, they're a threat to Israel. Look what happened to the Golan Heights just this past weekend with UN peacekeepers being attacked by another faction of the Syrian rebels, not the Al-Nusra, which is the Al-Qaeda, less violent but still pretty violent faction of these people. And the fact that it's hard to get a handle on all these different things, I think the American people just want to see someone say, this is what we're going to do, this is a problem, or quite frankly, say we're not going to get involved at all, because I think the American people veer back and forth between I don't want to know about it, I don't want to get involved with it, to we have to do something about it. The Foley execution has made people think we need to do something about it.
Right, because not getting involved, I mean, ISIS is only going to get more powerful, and they've grown so quickly. The airstrikes are only effective to a certain point. I mean, at one point, do you think ground troops have to go back in?
Not necessarily. This can be very much, I mean, there's a lot of debate about that. People think that because it's a big desert, because they're guerrilla warfare, you have to go with the ground troops. The experts are kind of divided on that, and that's, I think, partly the reason why the president said we have no strategy yet, because there is a big divide within the White House, within DOD, how to deal with this. He should have said we have a strategy, which is we are going to defeat ISIS one way or another. That leaves him the political, economic, as well as military route. He didn't say that. He said no strategy at all, which was a total disaster, PR disaster for him.
I think even if he had said we're fine-tuning our strategy, would have been a better way to go.
Yeah, or we have a policy that we're going to contain ISIS. We have a policy we're going to make sure they do not take over these other countries. We still have a policy of wanting to get rid of Assad, and they will not be the ones that will be responsible for it. Those are the kind of things he should have said. He didn't say it, and it's just been a terrible, terrible week for him.
Not only has it been a terrible week, but a lot of the voters, the Americans, American people are just saying, what's going on here? What is happening at the White House, or what is not happening at the White House?
Well, I think it's it's a reaction to the fact that they don't feel that the world is under control. I mean, we haven't even talked about the Ukraine, the fact that Russia may be sending in a significant number of Russian troops and Russian tanks into the Ukraine, which may spark a full-out war between Ukraine and Russia, which Ukraine will lose unless NATO steps in, and that's another big problem. So these are all this feeling of loss of control. The American people want a president who at least can say to them, can be the great communicator, can be the great conciliator, can be whoever it is. They're looking to that for leadership, and they're not quite seeing it right now, despite the fact that this is a president who has, whether you want to call it assassinated, killed, whatever, droned, more enemies of America than any other president in recent history, but they don't understand that. They don't see that as part of a coherent policy.
All right.
And we also know that it's always, with the American electorate, it's always, what have you done for me lately?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael Yaki, our political analyst joining us this morning. We're back with more coming up after the break.